Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we're talking about green schools. Joining us is Laura Johnson-Collard, Executive Director of Maryland Association of Environmental and Outdoor Education. So thank you so much, Laura, for joining me today.
I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, Janet.
To our viewers, please feel free to submit any questions or comments you have in the comment section, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. Laura, let's get started. So first, I'd love to just chat a little bit about the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education in general. So if you could just speak a little bit about the mission and then also the range of projects that you guys do.
Yes. So the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education has been around for over 30 years now, close to 40. And our mission is, hold on just one second, sorry, to encourage, engage, and empower our community to understand, responsibly use, and promote the natural world. So it's quite broad, but it is around that understanding of the environment that we live in, the environment that we experience on a day-to-day basis, and the environment that is changing around us as well.
What are some of the projects that you're working on, and what's the range that you cover? Because I know that you do more than just the Green Schools project.
Yes. So our focus is pre-K through 12 education, and our programming does actually, I would say, center around that Green School program, but we offer professional development for teachers, educators, formal and non-formal. We also are a member association, and so we have activities for members. Most of our members are environmental educators and are looking for ways to expand and enhance knowledge and also share knowledge. So there's a lot of opportunities for sharing. We hold a very large, in fact, it's the largest in the nation, State Association for Environmental Education conference. And that's held in February. Every other year it's in Ocean City. So in February of 2022, we'll be in Ocean City. And then we have been holding it in Towson the other year. This last year, or this year in 2021, our conference was held virtually because of the COVID restrictions. But that conference usually gets anywhere from 500 to 600 people attending. We are trying to build our connections with people who are interested in the environment and who might not consider themselves an environmental educator. So they are maybe community development people or people who are working with young people in after school programs or other programs. So those are people who would come to our conference. Our conference has themes. Last year was a theme on environmental justice, and our keynote speaker was John Francis, who is a renowned conservationist and climate advocate who has spent decades really asking people to look at how they impact the environment and to make changes. And he himself has made changes and has been recognized by National Geographic Society as one of their environmentalists. And so we have the Green Schools program, we have our conference, we're a member association. We also, as part of our Green Schools program, run a very large youth summit in the spring. And we invite all schools to come, but the schools that generally come are those that are celebrating their Green Schools achievements, although there are schools that come every year, whether they're celebrating that particular year or not. We have resources online as well that anyone can use. They're free and they're there. We have a resource library that has activities for teachers, for parents, and we also encourage students to look at that. We have a jobs board where we have current jobs that people can look at if they're seeking employment in environment and environmental education in particular. We also have information about things like the environmental literacy requirement and environmental literacy. So also lots of ways to connect with partners.
It sounds like you're doing a lot. I was wondering, how might you be different from an organization like NAAEE? So for our viewers and listeners, that's North American Association for Environmental Education. So they are national. What is different about you, and how is it just that it's local? And then if that's the sort of main piece, then what is that really providing your schools and then also your teachers?
Right. So NAAEE is a national association. We are an affiliate of NAAEE. So we are recognized as the state affiliate for that organization. We are our own nonprofit organization. We're run by a board and an advisory council. We have staff. And as you said, our programming is local. We also work regionally. So we're members in the state of an entity called Project Green Classrooms, which is led by DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and Maryland State Department of Education. We're also part of the Chesapeake Bay Programs Education Work Group, which regionally is looking at environmental education and environmental literacy. And so with that in mind, Janet, the NAAEE doesn't work so locally, and they don't work either, but they are a support network on a national scale. And one of the things that Maryland benefits from being a part of that network is that we're able to work in partnership with some of our affiliates in the area and then nationally. So there are things that we're doing nationally to advocate for environmental education. And we also, as a national network of affiliates, work together to support one another. So some affiliates have staff and other affiliates are run by a volunteer board. So you levels of organization and support, and we are a part of that and are supporting our colleagues and receiving support from other affiliates as well as we grow and build capacity in the state.
I can see how you're really a critical hub for resources. You know, you're going national, but then you're also connecting to a lot of the local government resources as well. So I can see how that is so critical, because you're right. So many things are lost when you're just looking at a national level, and that you need something that's more local. And I know that Maryland's working really hard, particularly with education, to make positive changes. And historically, they have done a decent job at including environmental education with some of their vision planning, maybe more so than other states. So with that, I'd love to just jump into the Green Schools program. Can you just talk about what it is and how long it's been around?
Right. So the Maryland Green Schools program has been around since 1999 and is a framework for schools to use that has three objectives. The first is systemic environmental education in classes. So from pre-K through high school, what our program says is, if you're a green school, you have curriculum across grade bands and you have environmental education that's incorporated there. You also have teachers, 10% of your school's teachers will be having environmental education, professional development, so that they are also developing ways in which to connect students to nature and their local environment. And the second objective is around student action. So it's very important with this program that students are involved and understand the impact that they have and the changes that they can make. So when the program was created in 1999, that second objective was student-led action projects. And as the program has developed and evolved, we know that there are some students who are not leading, but who are actually participating. And so we are looking for that leadership, but we are also looking for the participation of students, as many students as can be. We know in some schools that it's primarily the environment club that is doing a lot of the actions, but as a school participates over time, we hope that more students are involved. And then the third objective is around partnerships. And it's really important to have those partners locally. That helps with the sustainability of the program and offers additional resources to the school in terms of expertise and other resources. So it's a holistic look at curriculum, but also about environmental action and about long-term behavior change, not just for the students, but also looking at the teaching staff and support how they're supporting environmental literacy as well as environmental education.
If someone's interested in becoming a green school, what's the process for application and qualification? What sort of steps does someone need to take to move forward in becoming a green school?
Any school can be a green school. What we do ask is that you will have actions from those three objectives over a 2-year time before you apply. And then once you have become a green school, we do ask that you reapply every 4 years. That way we can see we're trying to build, again, that culture of green at a school so that students are seeing those actions over time. So every 4 years is a kind of a check-in, an elaborate check-in, because the rubric doesn't change from year to year. We are asking you to build on the actions and activities that you've done, but also to demonstrate, again, where curriculum is happening, what the curriculum is, that kind of thing. And we have in the last year, so the program had from 1999 until 2021 or 2020, you would participate as a green school for 14 years. And at the fourth time that you'd applied, you would become a sustainable green school. What we found is that there are some schools that really have the green practices embedded. They really are sustainable, but there are other schools, because of transition of teachers, of principals, of students, of parents who are supporting the program, that though they're not at a sustainable level. So they have good green practices that are going on, but maybe they need a bit more support. Or if that lead teacher left, nothing really is happening, or maybe a few things are happening that are embedded, like recycling or something like that. So we have this year launched our Sustainable Schools program. So that what we're looking at now, Janet, is an opportunity for a school to participate over time. And the structure does change once you've hit that 14-year marker, so that it really is like a check-in to say, hey, we're doing all right. Or, you know what, we are not okay. We need some support and help. And so the program now can go on generationally. So schools that have been green schools for 14 years, we have about 90 of them now. And so our hope is that those 90 schools will want to check in every 4 years and say, we're doing great. Look at what we've done. And in fact, we had schools ask us, what next? I'm a sustainable school. Can I tell you what we're doing? And so this was kind of in response to that. And then again, as I said, with the transitions and schools really having trouble and not being able to keep up with the practices. So that's the where we are now.
What's the evaluation process look like? Is it really just self-reporting by schools, or do you ever go out and check up on schools and see how they're doing? And then if you, as you said, like some schools acknowledge, hey, I'm struggling a little bit, I need help. What has been your role with providing those sort of extra helping hands?
Right. Well, I'll start with that one, Janet, and that is that we actually have a network of 42 green centers across the state. And those green centers are set up to, well, they're not set up, they're your Audubon Naturalist Society, your National Aquarium, your Evergreen Heritage Center out west, and your Adkins Arboretum on the eastern shore. So they are nature centers or aquarium or zoos in their own right. And they do a lot of them, all of them do environmental education. They have to model the 3 objectives, and they also support schools. So if a school doesn't know where to start, or they need professional development, or they want some curriculum support, or they need support with some of the student actions, those green centers are a great place to find that support. And so that system was set up really at the initiation of the program. And as I said, we have 42 of those now. Both the green centers and the green schools have a rubric that they follow, and they follow the 3 objectives. The 3 objectives do have more details, and all of the information is on our website. But we're looking in objective 1 on the rubric, and the rubric, we have a review process, which each application is reviewed 3 times. So it is self-reporting, but they're providing evidence, documentation, and information about each element. So if the reviewers don't understand or see what's been done, then we ask for more details. But generally speaking, our schools are good at taking pictures and providing student examples of work and providing the information that's needed. We don't ask for lots and paragraphs of information. We ask for location, we ask for the age of the children, we ask what they're doing so that the reviewers can see all of that. And if that's all visible in their application, the applications come in as Weebly's or Google websites or PowerPoint applications, so that the reviewers can see what's going on. You asked about site visits. We're really fortunate we do get to go to some schools, but we have 666 schools this year, and we don't visit all of them. But our green centers visit a lot of them. Our partners visit a lot of them as part of the work that they're doing. And so when you're reviewing the application, you can see the partners that are there. And they're described. Sometimes we don't know who's working with a school, but when we get the application, we can see who the green leaders and the green centers are that are working with the schools. So it's self-reporting, but it's highly visible what each school is doing and how they're doing it.
I can see how the partners really are a critical piece of the green centers and some of the other resources. And I can see how that ties it into the community and also makes everyone a little bit more accountable in a really positive way to make sure that all schools are moving towards being more sustainable. When people are applying, are you typically seeing applications from teachers or from principals or heads of school or even parents or kids?
Yeah. So our schools are private schools and public schools. Our schools are nurseries as well as the K through 12 or pre-K through 12. We also have some vocational schools, and we also have some schools that provide extra educational support. for kids with special needs. And those applications come in primarily, there's a lead teacher, Janet, who takes this on, but we really encourage in everything that we promote that they are not working alone, that they have a team of people to support, because if you do it alone, it really isn't building in that culture as well. And also it is challenging to do this application all on your own. So we do ask them to create a team. Now there are schools, East Caroline High School on the Eastern Shore, the students there in the Green Club said, we want our school to be a green school, and they worked and put the application together. In other schools, you'll find a PTA, a parent that says, I really want my school to be a green school and no one's leading it. So here we go. And the PTA takes it on. In some school systems, the superintendent of schools says, we want all of our schools to be a green school. So Prince George's County, Queen Anne's County, Calvert County and Queen Anne's County have 100% public schools as green schools. Prince George's County is our fastest growing and our largest system that has close to 75% of the schools now are green schools.
That's great.
Most of our green schools are in the central part of the state, Montgomery County, Howard County, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, and then in the eastern and western part of the state, we have 21 of our, sorry, not 21, we have 23 of 24 school districts that have green schools, and we're working on that last one. If you go to our website, you might be able to pick out which district it is, but I'm not going to tell you. We really, so that superintendent support makes a big difference. Principal support makes a big difference, but they are not usually the people that are filling out the application. They do have to sign a form that says, I know my school is going through the green school process, so that we know that they are understanding what has to happen. So
that makes a lot of sense. And I think, as you said, it takes a team, and that's really what's going to make it a sustainable school in the end. So the more people involved, the better. I think initially, often, like you said, oh, the head of the PTA is like, I want this. And you can start that way. But I think to really be successful, you need to have a village. How has this been going? What are you seeing as the impacts of this program? And now you said that this has been in existence since 1999, so that's a decent chunk of time. Are you seeing visible changes? And I know that's a big question because it's also really challenging to measure.
Well, what's really interesting about this program is, and I've been here now for 10 years, so I have been part of its growth and also watched what's happened. So this was not a funded program. It didn't start off with any funding. And most of our funding has come through grants where we're doing professional development, and usually in partnership with other organizations. But the funding for the Green Schools program really hasn't existed. It's been a program of goodwill, people that have been interested in seeing it grow. And at 666 schools, we're now at about 35% of all Maryland schools participating. So a few years ago, as MAEOE, we started talking, one, about what was going to happen in the future, and that's where the sustainable schools idea came up. So that now we can go not just from one generation of students going through school, but future generations can go through a green school as well. But the other thing that happened in the last few years is that we started thinking about, longevity and funding, and wanted to be able to support the program more. So in 2019, some members of the board and myself, and also a representative from NAAEE, Sarah Bodor, who's local from the Annapolis area, but works with the national organization. went to Annapolis and met with the Senate lead, Senator Miller, and we talked to him about the program, and he said, well, what are you looking for? And we said, well, we'd like funds to be able to grow this program. It's growing kind of slowly, you know, we get 1% here, but with our program, Janet, if you don't reapply, then you fall back, right? So there's an amount of attrition that we are wanting to stop. And then also with new schools, we generally have about 40 to 50 new schools in a year. And that was starting to climb before COVID. And then this last year we had 12 new schools, which we're so proud of. Every school that applied, there were 70 schools that applied this year. But anyway, we went and talked with Senator Miller, and we also talked with President of the House, Michael Bush, and they were both supportive. And so legislation was created that would provide funding for the program for the first time. And so in 2019, the Green Schools Act of 2019 passed. And with that is 6 years of funding. And the funding, there's an element of funding for professional development for teachers, but also for student actions and for transportation. So one of the biggest issues for environmental education in our state and across the nation is the cost of transporting kids to nature. And so there are some funds. I mean, that's $120,000 or so, 125 maybe. And it covers all of that. So we kind of parcel it out. And this last year, there were no transportation costs, but we're looking forward to being able to support some of that this year. And so the goal of this grant, state appropriation, it's not a grant, it's a state appropriation, is to increase the number of green schools to 50%. So we have quite a bit to do in the next 5 years because we've just finished the first year of funding. But we have some funding and support and are so excited to be able to offer. This year we've offered stipends to teachers who lead green schools who never receive, funding to be able to do the work that they do. They do it out of passion, or because the principals asked them, but there's a passion there. And we've also been able to offer stipends for professional development, which helps teachers to attend additional on top of their workday and their planning. To be able to attend professional development. And we've also offered scholarships to be able to attend the MAEOE conference, which we know is transformational for people who attend.
How does this tie into, so clearly you have some funding and that's been supported by legislation, which is really exciting. Something that we've talked about recently on this show and several times actually is the Kerwin Commission that then turned into the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And then our audience knows that that was recently passed, which is then going to give a bunch of funding to education. Will that impact the Green Schools program? And is that money that you could possibly see trickling your way to support environmental education? Because I know that's one of the things that they looked at with a whole scope of things in terms of how to make Maryland's education system the best in the country, if not the world.
Right. Yeah. Well, certainly I'm supportive of Kerwin. There are no direct funds allocated at this time from Kerwin for the Green Schools program. But when I've looked at Kerwin and listened to what it can do, environmental education is a component of that. And I think that Maryland as a whole, so I'll just backtrack ever so slightly to a comment I made earlier. We were the first state in the United States to have an environmental literacy requirement. and it's still there. And in fact, the requirement has been refreshed. So last year, the COMAR was changed ever so slightly, but it still stands and it's still there to support environmental literacy of our students. It's an untested mandate. I believe that the Kerwin funding can support further engagement in our schools for creating an environmental and a healthy environment for our students, as well as being able to position them in the 21st century for green jobs. And there's a lot of work to do and a lot of organizations that are doing that. And MAEOE is just one of those organizations. But I do believe, Janet, that a green school is an important element of that. And if your school is a green school, that you know that your child is having environmental literacy curriculum, they are having environmental education opportunities, and that they hopefully in the next decade are also going to know what green jobs there are and be prepared for those green jobs. So there is a lot of opportunity in the Kerwin funding, and hopefully people will make those connections to the green schools and everything. So being a green school really is, the green school is a platform for you to be able to showcase and say, this is what our green school does. This is what we do in curriculum. These are the teachers that go to PD. This is how we celebrate. This is what our students are doing to conserve energy, conserve water, to manage waste, to create a healthy school environment, to create structures for learning, to conserve resources. There are 8 objectives to learn about, or not 8 objectives, 8 student action possibilities, and to do citizen science, community science. So hopefully people will see the connections that the Kerwin funding provides, and then put what they're doing into their green school application, which will make their green school application even more solid.
That makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of potential there. And, you know, you just laid out the pathway to making it possible and working on becoming an even more sustainable school. My last question for you, just to bring it home a little bit to our viewers, which many of them are our parents and educators. I know that this past year has been so crazy and tumultuous for everyone as we've been navigating the pandemic and what that means for so many families. You mentioned to me before we got started today that you, one of the things that you've been working on is providing resources for families and teachers and sort of some fun things that you have available in more of a virtual component, which is always really challenging when you're working on environmental education. And I think we're so used to the hands-on aspects of being outside, and now it's sort of left to families to figure out and navigate on their own. So could you just speak a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing in that area?
Yes. So in the last year, one of the things that we did with our partners, and it was an outlet for teachers and partners to be able to say, how do I transfer the things that I do in the classroom to a virtual platform? And so we worked together, formal educators, non-formal educators, to really do that transition and transfer. And a lot of those resources are on the MAEOE website, which is www.maeoe.org. And under the resource library, there are free resources and programs. And you'll see home-based environmental education resources for teachers, parents, and guardians. There also in there are newsletters that were created that can be used over and over again. And one of them is called Engaging with Nature. And so the way that those are structured, Janet, a parent could look at it and say, oh, that's an activity I could do with my children this weekend. The other thing we're aware of with an equity lens, Janet, is that some kids who have parents who are working from home couldn't leave their home because the parents were working and they didn't want kids running around outside. So there are things you can do from your house looking through a window, things that you can think about, and so many great videos and things. A lot of school systems provided the Wi-Fi connection so that students could work from home. And I believe that a lot of students still have those tools as we get ready to go back to school. But you know, there are tours, local tours and national and international tours of parks and exploration. Our environmental educators in this state are so creative, and they would do tours of their park and have you look for things, and then they would lift up the rock or the tree branch and show you what was underneath. It's so creative and cool. Anyway, those are available. And then also just activities you can do in your front yard and backyard, at the local park, just down the street, on the school grounds, that kind of thing. So those resources will still be there. And in fact, as we come out of COVID, what we're doing in the environmental education community is we know we've reached people through virtual, through the internet, that we've never seen before at some of our in-person events. And so we're going to keep putting some of our training. If we have a training in person, we will mirror that virtually. And it's more for us, for the environmental education community, but I think it's also an opportunity to reach more people. It's really important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to Laura Johnson Collard, who is the Executive Director of Maryland Association of Environmental and Outdoor Education. Thank you also to all of our viewers and listeners today. Make sure that you do visit ChesapeakeFamily.com for up-to-date local information on home, health, and living for today's Maryland parent. We'll put all the links up on the website so you can connect directly to the Maryland Association of Environmental and Outdoor Education, and that then you can get all those fantastic resources that Laura talked about. This episode will be archived on ChesapeakeFamily.com in both video and podcast format. I'm Janet Jefferson with Chesapeake Family Life and Third Floor Views. Thanks so much.